Kasr Veyra's skies burned dimly, a slow death painted in shades of bruised purple and fading gold. The dying sun, once a proud sentinel of light for this fortress world, now bled its final rays through a veil of dust and ash. Far below, the shattered remnants of ancient citadels sprawled like bones picked clean by time and war. The air hung heavy with silence, an oppressive stillness that swallowed the memories of 1,000 battles, leaving only whispers of ghosts lingering in the void. In the shadows of a collapsed tower, Sergeant Cadian Guardsman crouched, his breath shallow, every heartbeat a painful echo against the cavernous silence. His armor, chipped and dulled by relentless conflict, bore the scars of uncountable campaigns fought at the bleeding edge of the galaxy. Once, Kasr Veyra was a beacon, a bulwark against the darkness beyond the Cadian Gate, a symbol of unyielding resistance. Now, it was a tomb, and Cadian, the last surviving sentinel, bore the weight of that loss as heavily as his bolter. His eyes traced the horizon where the stars struggled to pierce the encroaching shadows. Somewhere in that void lay the Imperium's hope, but hope felt distant, fragile as the dying embers of a once mighty forge. For centuries, Cadian had fought, bled, and watched comrades fall, swallowed by the endless tide of war. The steady rhythm of loyalty beat inside him still, but beneath it, a slow, gnawing doubt had begun to take root. What does it mean to live when everything you've sworn to protect crumbles to dust? To endure while the world you knew slips silently into oblivion? The question haunted him like a cold shadow, its edges sharp enough to pierce the thickest armor. The tales whispered among the scattered survivors spoke of betrayal, a venom that had spread unseen within the highest ranks. Some claimed Kasr Veyra was sacrificed, a pawn in a game far beyond mortal comprehension. Others murmured of dark pacts forged in secrecy, of ancient powers awakened and unleashed in the name of conquest. Cadian was torn between the rigid doctrine etched into his soul and the unrelenting murmur of suspicion that whispered he had been abandoned, left to die in a tomb of silence. His mind flickered back to the day the first warning came, a cryptic transmission, fragmented and desperate, urging caution against those once considered allies. The voice had trembled, laced with fear and something else, regret. It was a betrayal not just of trust, but of blood and honor. Cadian clenched his fists, the weight of his bolter grounding him in a world unraveling at its seams. The curse of immortality was not one of blessing, but a chain, an unyielding tether to a legacy he no longer understood. To live beyond the fall of empires was to bear witness to endless decay, to endless sacrifice with no promise of salvation. The fortress world's bones creaked beneath the weight of ages, and somewhere deep within a spark of defiance still burned. Cadian rose, every step heavy with purpose and pain. The war outside was far from over, but the greater battle was now within, between loyalty and doubt, between the fading light and the all-consuming dark. Kasr Veyra was not just a place. It was a symbol, a memory, a last hope, and Cadian Guardsman, the Forgotten Watch, was bound to its fate. As the dying sun dipped below the horizon, swallowing the fortress in twilight, a single thought clenched his heart. The empire might fall, but the fight must endure. The cold winds swept through the fractured corridors of Kasr Veyra, carrying with them the scent of smoke, ancient stone, and something darker, something unspoken. Sergeant Cadian Guardsman moved cautiously through the labyrinthine ruins, every footfall a careful echo in the hollow silence. Around him, the fortress world bore the scars of relentless siege, collapsed battlements, scorched walls etched with the wounds of fire and plasma, and the faint hum of broken machinery clinging stubbornly to life. Here, history was etched not in books or memories alone, but in blood and ruin. Cadian's thoughts were heavy, fragmented like the shattered ground beneath his boots. In the aftermath of Kasr Veyra's fall, the lines between friend and foe had blurred into a murky gray. His loyalty to the Imperium was unyielding, yet the very commanders he had once revered now cast long shadows of doubt. His mind returned to the moment he met Captain Lyria Thane, a beacon of unshakable resolve amidst the chaos. Her eyes held the weight of unspoken truths, and in her presence, Kaelin found a tentative anchor. Lyria was unlike any leader Kaelin had known, fierce, calculating, but burdened with the same ghosts that haunted him. Their alliance was forged not in trust but necessity, a fragile pact against the gathering storm. Together they spoke of the rising threats beyond Kasr Veyra, the encroaching forces of the Chaos Legions, the subtle machinations of rival factions vying for power in the shadows. Yet beneath their strategic discussions lay a deeper, unvoiced tension. Both wrestled with loyalty to an Imperium that seemed to fracture at its core. In quiet moments, Kaelin observed Lyria's restless gaze, catching the flicker of something he dared not name, regret, perhaps, or fear. She confided in him once in the dim light of a failing generator about the secret project whispered among the higher echelons, the resurrection protocols. Ancient technology buried deep beneath Kasr Veyra, capable of granting immortality, not the cursed endless life of the Necrons, but a flawed, desperate chance to cheat death. It was a gamble that promised salvation or eternal damnation. Kaelin grappled with the moral weight of such power. Was it salvation or an abomination? Could one cling to life without losing one's very soul? The question gnawed at him, mirroring the broader dilemma that plagued the Imperium. How far was one willing to go to survive, and at what cost? Their fragile alliance soon faced its first fracture. A betrayal whispered in shadows and cloaked in political intrigue threatened to unravel everything. A trusted aide, once a comrade in arms, was revealed to be a spy, feeding secrets to an unknown enemy. The revelation struck Kaelin like a blow, igniting a storm of suspicion and paranoia. Was loyalty a relic of a bygone era, or the last light in an ever-darkening galaxy? In the face of treachery, Kaelin and Lyria's bond hardened into something more, a shared determination to uncover the hidden enemies within and without. But even as they prepared to strike, a silent question lingered. Could they trust each other fully, or were they merely pawns in a game far greater than themselves? The fortress creaked around them, a dying giant gasping its last breath. Outside, the distant roar of war drums echoed across the void, signaling that the galaxy's relentless hunger for power was far from sated. The fate of Kasr Veyra, and the fragile hopes of those who defended it, hung by a thread woven from loyalty, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of survival. Kaelin tightened his grip on his bolter, feeling the cold steel anchor him amidst the shifting tides of doubt. In this crucible of war and treachery, the true battle was not only against enemies without, but the demons lurking within. And the cost of victory might yet be his own soul. The endless night over Kasr Veyra deepened. Stars blinked cold and distant above the shattered spires. Their light filtered through a haze of ash that drifted like ghosts across the desolate skies. Sergeant Kaelin Varn stood alone on a crumbled battlement, the weight of solitude pressing down on him heavier than any enemy's blade. The fortress world around him was a graveyard of broken dreams and forgotten valor, yet in his heart stirred a relentless fire, a defiance against the slow erosion of hope. His mind traced the fragile alliances that had been forged in blood and shadow. Captain Lyria Thane, with her relentless will and hidden scars, had become more than a comrade. She was a mirror to his own haunted soul, yet even their shared purpose could not quell the growing tempest of doubt. Beneath the surface, secrets festered, secrets that threatened to rend their fragile unity asunder. Kalen's thoughts drifted to the whispered legend of the Catan, an ancient relic of power said to bend the threads of time itself. The rumors spoke of it as a weapon and a curse, capable of granting glimpses into the endless march of fate or unraveling it completely. Some believed the Catan was buried deep within Kasr Veyra's forgotten vaults, guarded by wards older than the Imperium itself. Others whispered it was the key to salvation or ruin, depending on who wielded it. The temptation of such power weighed heavily upon Kalen's soul. To glimpse the future, to alter the course of a crumbling empire. It was a seductive promise, yet fraught with peril. What price must be paid to defy the flow of time? Could one man shoulder the burden of such knowledge without being consumed by it? The answers lay tangled in the shifting loyalties around him. Among their ranks moved a shadow. Zorath, once a trusted advisor, now a figure cloaked in suspicion. His words were measured, his eyes unreadable, but Kalen sensed a darkness lurking beneath the surface. Was Zorath a guardian of secrets or the architect of betrayal? The lines blurred, and every step forward felt like walking a blade's edge. Tensions mounted as whispers of insurrection stirred in the fortress's darkest corners. Rumors of a clandestine faction seeking to seize control spread like wildfire, sowing distrust among allies. Kalen found himself caught between duty and suspicion, uncertain who to trust when the enemy might wear the face of a friend. Yet even amidst the turmoil, moments of fragile humanity pierced the gloom. In quiet exchanges with Lyria, they shared stories of lost worlds and faded dreams, reminders that beneath the armor and the war they were bound by the same fears and hopes. These fleeting connections offered a fragile balm against the encroaching darkness, but Kalen knew they could shatter with the slightest tremor of betrayal. As the storm of war gathered beyond Kasr Veyra's crumbling walls, Kalen stood poised on the precipice of a choice that would define not only his fate but that of an empire. The path ahead was shrouded in shadow and flame, where every decision bore the weight of countless lives and the echo of ancient powers. The dying sun had long vanished, leaving only the cold stars to witness the rise of a soldier burdened by immortality, loyalty, and the crushing cost of ambition. The hollow silence within Kasr Veyra's ruins was broken only by the distant echoes of marching feet and the faint hum of energy fields flickering to life. Deep beneath the shattered surface, in the labyrinthine depths of forgotten catacombs, Sergeant Kalen Varn and Captain Lyria Thane moved with grim purpose. Their faces were etched with exhaustion, their eyes shadowed by the weight of secrets too heavy for mortal shoulders. The labyrinth was a testament to ages past, walls inscribed with ancient runes, long faded from memory, telling tales of empires risen and fallen like the tides of the warp. Each step carried Kalen deeper into the heart of Kasr Veyra's legacy, and deeper into a truth long buried beneath layers of deception. Lyria's voice was low, tinged with urgency as she revealed the clandestine nature of the resurrection protocols. A forbidden project sanctioned in secret by the highest echelons, it promised a means to cheat death itself. To resurrect fallen warriors through biotransference and arcane technology. A promise that both terrified and captivated those desperate enough to grasp at immortality. Kalen's heart clenched. Was this salvation, or the birth of an eternal curse? He recalled the faces of comrades, lost, echoes trapped between life and death, forever wandering the void. The very notion of defying mortality begged the question, what price must be paid for such hubris? Their alliance, forged in necessity, was tested by the specter of doubt. Trust wavered as whispers of sabotage and betrayal haunted the fortress. A faction within their own ranks sought to seize control of the resurrection protocols. For their own dark ends, a coup that could ignite a war far deadlier than the external threats looming beyond the shattered skies. Kaelin grappled with his own conflicted heart. His loyalty to the Imperium was absolute, yet the imperfection of those who wielded power disturbed him. Was it possible to remain pure in a galaxy rife with corruption and ambition? The boundaries between heroism and villainy blurred, leaving him suspended in a liminal space where every choice bore a shadow. As they descended deeper, the ancient corridors seemed to breathe with unseen life. Ghosts of the past stirring, their silent judgment pressing down like a suffocating shroud. Kaelin's grip tightened on his bolter, the cold steel a tether to reality amidst the swirling mists of doubt. A sudden noise shattered the tense quiet. Footsteps measured and deliberate. Lyria's eyes flashed with alarm. Emerging from the shadows was Zorath, his expression unreadable, bearing the weight of secrets that could tip the fragile balance. "I trust you understand the consequences if this falls into the wrong hands." Zorath's voice was steady, but beneath it simmered a warning. "The resurrection protocols are not merely a weapon. They are a reckoning." Kaelin met his gaze, sensing the unspoken truths lurking beneath the surface. The battle ahead was no longer just for survival, but for the soul of Kasr Veyra, and perhaps the entire Imperium. Outside, the dying sun's last light was swallowed by a storm of ash and fire, heralding a reckoning that no soul could escape. The echoes of footsteps faded into the oppressive silence, leaving Kaelin alone with the heavy weight of Zorath's words reverberating in his mind. The resurrection protocols were not merely tools of salvation, but harbingers of reckoning, a force as capable of salvation as it was of destruction. In the cold corridors beneath Kasr Veyra, the line between hope and damnation blurred, tangled in ambition and desperate fear. Kaelin's thoughts spiraled back to the faces of the fallen, brothers and sisters whose names had become whispers on the wind. The promise of return stirred a cruel temptation, to defy death, to reclaim what was lost. Yet in the depths of his soul he knew immortality was a cage wrought from fragile flesh and fading memories. The ancient warriors who had long since succumbed to time's embrace had become shadows, prisoners of endless existence. Lyria's presence remained a flicker of warmth in the cold gloom, but even her steadfast resolve bore cracks. She revealed her own secret burden, a past entwined with the architects of the resurrection protocols, bound by loyalty and a painful knowledge of their cost. Her confession deepened Kaelin's conflict, weaving threads of betrayal tighter around their fragile alliance. In the quiet moments between war's relentless march, Kaelin grappled with the growing suspicion that the true enemy was no longer the chaos legions beyond the gate, but the darkness festering within. Corruption seeped into hearts and minds like poison, twisting ideals into instruments of ruin. Was the Imperium itself becoming the architect of its own downfall? Rumors circulated through the shattered ranks, whispers of forbidden experiments, of souls sacrificed for fleeting gains. The fragile trust that held the defenders of Kasr Veyra together began to crumble. Paranoia gnawed at their bones. Every glance carried the weight of accusation, every word the sting of betrayal. Kaelin found himself standing at a crossroads where loyalty collided with survival, where choices bore consequences far beyond his understanding. Could he stand against the tide of darkness that threatened to consume them all? Or would he be swept away in its unforgiving current? Outside, the storm that had been gathering since the last dying light now raged in full fury. Lightning tore the sky as if the heavens themselves were rent by unseen claws. Kasr Veyra shuddered beneath the onslaught, a dying titan trembling on the brink of collapse. Amid the chaos, a silent vow took root within Kaelin's heart, to fight not only for the Empire's survival, but to uncover the truth buried beneath layers of lies and shadow. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but in that peril lay the fragile hope for redemption. As the howling tempest swallowed the fortress, Cailan steeled himself for the darkness to come, knowing that every step forward drew him deeper into the maelstrom of betrayal and fate. Kasr Veyra's storm-ravaged skies wept cold fire as torrents of ash and blood-red lightning tore through the remnants of the fortress world. Deep within the shattered catacombs, Sergeant Cailan Varn moved with grim resolve, each step a measured defiance against the chaos consuming all he had ever known. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and decay, mingled with the distant cries of dying machines and the faint hum of arcane wards struggling to hold against time's relentless erosion. Lyria Thane's voice, steady yet laced with unspoken fear, broke through the oppressive darkness. She revealed fragments of a plan, whispered in shadows. The resurrection protocols were more than mere science. They were entwined with forbidden rites, ancient sacrifices that tethered mortal souls to the cursed machinery below. The project's architects had gambled with forces older than the Imperium itself, weaving biotransference with warp-tainted energies, a precarious balance between salvation and annihilation. Cailan's heart clenched as the enormity of their task weighed upon him. To wield such power was to flirt with madness, to gamble with the essence of what it meant to be alive. The soldiers they sought to resurrect might return, yet would they remain the same? Or would they be twisted echoes, puppets of a dark and merciless fate? Their fragile alliance now bore the strain of uncertainty, trust eroding beneath the shadows of betrayal. Whispers of dissent had grown louder, and factions within their ranks maneuvered like vultures, hungry for control over the Resurrection Project's immense power. Cailan knew that one false step could ignite a civil war more devastating than the external threats that battered their walls. A sudden tremor shook the catacombs, dust cascading from the cracked ceilings. Through the gloom emerged a figure, Zorath, his expression unreadable, eyes gleaming with secrets too dangerous to speak aloud. His presence was a reminder that the greatest battles were not only fought on broken fields, but within the hearts of men. Time phrased like worn threads, Zorath intoned, voice a whisper that carried the weight of centuries. The resurrection protocols may bind the living to the dead, but they cannot mend the fractures within us. The true enemy lies not beyond these walls, but in the choices we make. Cailan met his gaze, understanding the unspoken challenge. To survive, they must confront not only the hordes gathering beyond Kasr Veyra, but the darkness festering inside their own souls. The storm outside was mirrored in the turmoil within, a tempest of loyalty, doubt, and the crushing burden of immortality. As the dying world trembled beneath the onslaught of chaos and ambition, Cailan resolved to carry the torch of the Forgotten Watch. The path ahead was shrouded in shadow and flame, but he would not falter. For in the end, even amidst ruin, the faintest ember of hope could ignite the brightest flame. The horizon of Kasr Veyra cracked under the unrelenting assault of storms, both natural and wrought by mortal strife. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the battered walls in harsh bursts of pale light, as if the very heavens wept for the dying fortress. The air was thick with the acrid taste of burning promethium and the distant echoes of artillery fire, a symphony of chaos heralding the storm to come. Sergeant Cailan Varn stood atop a ruined parapet, his eyes fixed on the war-torn expanse before him. The internal conflict that had haunted him since Kasr Veyra's fall now boiled to the surface, threatening to consume the fragile steadiness he clung to. His loyalty to the Imperium warred with the gnawing suspicion that the greatest enemy was not the heretics beyond the gate, but the rot festering in the hearts of men. Beside him, Captain Lyria Thane's gaze was sharp, her posture rigid as steel forged in fire. Yet beneath her unwavering exterior, Cailan glimpsed a crack, a hesitation born of secrets too heavy to bear. Their alliance had weathered the fractures of betrayal, but the price had been high. Every whispered secret and shadowed glance sowed seeds of doubt, and the line between friend and foe blurred into a jagged edge. The fortress trembled as a new threat emerged. A coup led by those who sought dominion over the resurrection protocols. The betrayal struck deep. Brothers in arms turned traitors, their ambitions veiled beneath false oaths. Kaelin's heart clenched with bitter regret, the sting of treachery slicing through the remnants of trust like a blade. In the war rooms beneath the shattered keep, plans were forged amid flickering hololiths and flickering lights. Zorath, enigmatic and inscrutable, presented visions of the Catan, a relic steeped in myth and shadow, capable of unraveling time's fabric or binding it anew. The temptation of such power was a double-edged sword, promising salvation yet threatening annihilation. Kaelin wrestled with the decision. Should he grasp the Catan and risk the unknown, or reject it and face certain destruction? His thoughts turned inward, where memories of fallen comrades mingled with the oppressive burden of immortality. To live through the rise and fall of empires was to bear a curse heavier than any war. As the tide of betrayal rose, the storm outside mirrored the chaos within. The shattered walls of Kasr Veyra became a crucible, testing the mettle of those who remained. Kaelin and Lyria prepared to confront the traitors, knowing that the battle ahead would determine not only their survival but the fate of the Imperium itself. The dying sun cast long shadows over the battlefield, a somber reminder that even in the face of ruin, hope could burn fierce, if only one dared to hold the flame. The shattered remnants of Kasr Veyra's citadel shuddered beneath the thunderous march of betrayal. The once proud halls, carved from ancient stone and etched with the glory of forgotten victories, now bore the scars of internal war. Shadows flickered across cracked walls as factions clashed, not in the name of the Imperium, but driven by lust for power and survival. Sergeant Kaelin Varn moved through the chaos like a wraith, his bolter clenched tight, every step measured and deliberate. The weight of centuries pressed upon him, each breath heavy with the memories of friends lost and ideals broken. His eyes searched the faces of those around him, seeking loyalty but finding only flickers of doubt and fear. The line between ally and enemy blurred into indistinction. Captain Lyria Thane fought beside him, her blade singing a mournful dirge against the traitors who sought to seize control of the resurrection protocols. The air crackled with the raw energy of war, mingling with whispered secrets and desperate prayers. In their briefest exchanges, Kaelin glimpsed the fierce determination behind her guarded gaze and the silent question lingering between them. How much could they trust one another in a world unraveling at the seams? Amid the awed fury of battle, Zorath emerged from the shadows bearing a warning that chilled Kaelin to his core. The Catan, the ancient relic of myth, had been awakened, its power stirring beneath the fortress like a slumbering tempest. The weapon's ability to warp time itself was no longer legend, but a dire reality, threatening to unravel the fragile threads holding Kasr Veyra together. The coup's leaders sought to wield the Catan's power, to bend fate to their will and secure dominion over the crumbling empire. But such power demanded a price, one measured not in lives but in souls. The resurrection protocols were but a shadow of the true cost, eternal torment masked as salvation, an unending cycle of death and rebirth without rest or release. Kaelin's mind wrestled with the impossible choice. To let the Catan fall into the wrong hands was to doom them all, yet to seize its power risked corruption beyond reckoning. The fortress trembled as the storm of war and ambition collided, a crucible that would forge the fate of empires. As the lightning cracked overhead and the walls groaned beneath the siege, Kaelin found himself standing at the precipice of fate, where every decision bore the weight of eternity and every betrayal echoed through the endless night. The air hung thick with smoke and ash as Kasr Veyra's ancient stones trembled under the weight of war. Lightning tore jagged scars across the storm-darkened sky, illuminating the fractured battlements where desperate figures clashed in a grim dance of survival and betrayal. Sergeant Cadian Guardsman moved through the chaos, his senses honed by centuries of combat. Every step a testament to unyielding resolve. Around him, the fortress was a battleground not just of steel and fire, but of fractured loyalties and shattered trust. The insurrection that had once lurked in whispers now erupted with brutal clarity, fracturing the defenders into splintered factions, each driven by ambition, fear, or desperation. The resurrection protocols, their promise of eternal life, had become a curse, a prize worth spilling blood for, yet tainted by shadowed deceit. Cadian's eyes sought Captain Lyria Thane amidst the turmoil, finding her locked in deadly combat against former comrades turned enemies. Her blade sang with fierce grace, a beacon of defiance amid the encroaching darkness. Their brief glance met with a silent understanding. Trust was scarce, and the line between salvation and damnation razor-thin. From the depths of the fortress emerged Zorath, his presence a chilling reminder of the burden they all bore. He carried news of the Cadian's awakening, the ancient artifact whose power to unravel time threatened to shatter not just Kasr Veyra, but the very fabric of the Imperium. Its resurgence was a catalyst, stirring forces ancient and malevolent from their slumber. The clash intensified as factions vied for control, the fortress shaking under the weight of their desperation. Cadian's mind raced, each decision a thread in a tapestry of ruin or redemption. The resurrection protocols held the promise of salvation, yet whispered warnings of eternal torment echoed through his thoughts. To wield such power was to dance on the edge of oblivion. Amid the chaos, a terrible realization took root. Kasr Veyra was not merely falling. It was being undone from within. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, twisting the souls of those who once stood united. Cadian's heart bore the scars of that fracture, each moment a step closer to an abyss from which there might be no return. As the storm reached its crescendo, the last vestiges of hope flickered against the gathering darkness. The fate of Kasr Veyra, and the legacy of its forgotten watch, hung precariously in the balance, poised on the edge of oblivion. Lightning shattered the night sky over Kasr Veyra, the fortress world groaning beneath relentless assault both from without and within. The air was thick with smoke and charged energy as the battle for the resurrection protocols reached a fevered pitch. Amid the swirling chaos, Sergeant Cadian Guardsman moved with grim purpose, his every step echoing the weight of centuries spent bearing witness to the rise and fall of empires. Captain Lyria Thane fought at his side, her movements precise and unforgiving, a tempest of steel and resolve amid the storm of betrayal. Yet beneath her fierce exterior lingered an unspoken torment, a shadow Cadian glimpsed but dared not name. Their fragile alliance had weathered countless trials, but now, more than ever, trust felt like a precious and fleeting commodity. In the war rooms carved from ancient stone, Zorath revealed the true cost of the resurrection protocols. The process was no miracle but a dark pact, a fusion of biotransference and warp-tainted sorcery that bound the resurrected souls to eternal servitude. Those who returned were not the heroes of old, but echoes trapped between life and death, prisoners of a curse masquerading as salvation. The revelation shattered the fragile hope that had sustained them. Cadian's heart wrenched with the knowledge that salvation came at the price of endless torment, that immortality was a chain forged in shadows. Yet even as despair threatened to consume him, a spark of defiance ignited, a vow to fight not for cursed survival but for true redemption. Outside, the fortress shuddered beneath the assault of rival factions, each desperate to seize control of the Catan, the ancient relic whose power could bend the very fabric of time. The artifact's awakening had stirred forces beyond reckoning, its influence rippling through the ranks like a storm of madness and ambition. Kalen faced the impossible choice: to wield the Catan's power and risk corruption, or to reject it and face annihilation. His mind was a battlefield of doubt and resolve, where loyalty and survival clashed in a brutal dance. As lightning cleaved the sky, Kasr Veyra's fate teetered on a knife's edge. The Empire's legacy hung by a thread, its future shaped by choices forged in fire, sacrifice, and betrayal. Kalen steeled himself for the darkness to come, knowing that the true battle was not just for a world, but for the soul of all who remained. The weight of the coming night pressed upon Kasr Veyra like a suffocating shroud. The fortress world, scarred and battered, bore witness to the unraveling of a legacy built on blood, loyalty, and sacrifice. Sergeant Kalen Varn stood amidst the ruins, his armor stained with the grime of relentless conflict, his eyes reflecting the storm raging both outside and within. Captain Lyria Thane's voice was a whisper carried on the wind, a fragile thread of hope entwined with bitter resolve. The fractures among their ranks deepened, the betrayal cutting into their fragile unity with ruthless precision. Friends became foes, and the shadows of doubt stretched long, threatening to consume the very heart of their cause. In the heart of the fortress, the Catan pulsed with an ancient, otherworldly energy. Its awakening had shattered the veil between past and present, dragging the echoes of forgotten wars into the desperate now. The artifact's power was a double-edged blade, capable of weaving salvation or unraveling reality itself. Zorath's warnings echoed in Kalen's mind, a haunting reminder that the true enemy was not only the heretics outside their walls, but the darkness festering within. The resurrection protocols, once a beacon of hope, now revealed their true nature, a cycle of torment masquerading as life, binding souls to an eternal prison. Kalen grappled with the crushing weight of immortality's curse. To live beyond the fall of empires was to bear witness to endless decay, to sacrifice the fragile humanity that once defined him. The faces of the fallen haunted his thoughts, their memories a bittersweet tether to a past slipping irretrievably into shadow. As the fortress trembled under the onslaught of internal rebellion and external siege, Kalen and Lyria prepared to confront the final betrayal. The lines between loyalty and ambition blurred, and the cost of victory grew ever steeper. In the looming darkness, choices must be made, choices that would echo through eternity. Kasr Veyra teetered on the brink of oblivion, a world caught between the dying light of yesterday and the uncertain dawn of tomorrow. The Forgotten Watch stood resolute, bound by honor, haunted by loss, and driven by a defiant hope that even amidst ruin redemption might still be found. Kasr Veyra shuddered beneath a sky torn asunder, the heavens rent by streaks of crimson lightning and the roar of distant explosions. The once mighty fortress world, cradle of forgotten glories, now lay fractured, its stones soaked with the blood of brothers and betrayers alike. Amidst the chaos, Sergeant Kalen Varn moved like a shadow, his every step weighed by the burden of countless battles fought and lost. Captain, Lyria Thane's voice, steady despite the storm, cut through the din. Their fragile alliance had been tested beyond endurance. Trust, once a steady beacon, now flickered like a dying flame. Secrets whispered in the shadows of ancient halls threatened to undo the fragile tapestry they had woven from sacrifice and desperation. The Catan's pulse grew stronger, its ancient energies weaving through the very fabric of Kasr Veyra. Time itself seemed to bend beneath its influence, memories overlapping with present horrors. The artifact was both salvation and curse, a power that could rewrite fate or condemn all to eternal despair. Zorath stood beside Kaelin, a grim sentinel bearing truths that cut deeper than any blade. The resurrection protocols had revealed their true cost, not salvation but eternal servitude to a will older than the stars themselves. Those who returned from death were but echoes, shadows bound in chains of warp-tainted flesh and lingering agony. Kaelin's heart clenched as he faced the weight of his own immortality. To live beyond the rise and fall of empires was to watch the universe bleed itself dry, to carry the scars of endless loss etched deep within the soul. The memories of fallen comrades flickered like distant stars, guiding lights in the encroaching darkness. As the fortress crumbled beneath the onslaught of rebellion and ruin, Kaelin and Lyria prepared for the ultimate confrontation. Loyalties would shatter, sacrifices would stain the bloodied stones, and the true cost of ambition would be revealed in the crucible of war. Kasr Veyra stood at the edge of oblivion, a world caught between the fading light of a dying sun and the encroaching shadow of eternity. The Forgotten Watch, though battered and broken, remained steadfast, a testament to the indomitable spirit that refused to yield even in the face of annihilation. Kasr Veyra's skies burned with the furious light of countless explosions, the fortress world groaning beneath the relentless storm of betrayal and war. Sergeant Kaelin Varn stood amidst the wreckage, his armor scarred and stained, the weight of centuries pressing upon his weary shoulders. Around him, the fractured remnants of the Forgotten Watch clashed with insurgents whose ambitions threatened to unravel the very fabric of their cause. Captain Lyria Thane fought fiercely, her blade a whirlwind of precise fury amid the chaos. Yet beneath her fierce exterior, a tempest of doubt and sorrow churned. The fractures within their ranks had deepened into chasms, and every decision carried the heavy toll of sacrifice and loss. The Cadian pulsed with a malignant glow in the heart of the fortress, its power surging through the veins of Kasr Veyra like a living storm. The ancient artifact's influence bent reality, twisting time and fate into an unforgiving maze. To wield it was to grasp the threads of destiny itself, but at a cost no soul could fully comprehend. Zorath stood at Kaelin's side, his eyes reflecting the grim knowledge of what was to come. The resurrection protocols had become a prison for the souls they sought to save, binding them to eternal servitude in a torment that defied mortal understanding. Redemption seemed a distant dream, swallowed by the growing darkness. In the midst of the final battle, Kaelin faced a terrible choice, a decision that would shatter bonds and define the fate of Kasr Veyra. To claim the Cadian's power was to risk corruption beyond salvation. To reject it was to embrace oblivion. The echoes of fallen comrades whispered in his mind, their faces a haunting reminder of all that was at stake. As the fortress trembled and the sky burned, Kaelin raised his voice in a rallying cry that pierced the tempest. The Forgotten Watch would stand, not as pawns of fate, but as architects of their own destiny, even if that path led through fire and shadow. The final confrontation loomed, where loyalty, sacrifice, and ambition would collide in a tempest that would echo through the annals of history. Kasr Veyra's fate, and the legacy of those who stood to defend it, hung in the balance, poised on the edge of eternity's unforgiving blade. Kasr Veyra's horizon was ablaze with fire and lightning, the sky a tempest of wrath and ruin as the fortress world heaved under the final throes of its destruction. Sergeant Kaelin Varn stood amid the shattered battlements, his armor battered and his spirit scarred by the unrelenting trials of war and betrayal. Around him, the last defenders of the Forgotten Watch faced their ultimate reckoning, their faces etched with exhaustion, determination, and the bitter sting of loss. Captain Lyria Thane's eyes burned with a fierce light, her blade slicing through the ranks of traitors who had once been brothers. Yet beneath her relentless fury lay a hollow ache, a recognition that victory would demand a sacrifice far greater than any they had yet endured. The fractures that had torn their fellowship now bled into the very soul of the Imperium itself. The Catan pulsed at the heart of the fortress, its eldritch energies tearing at the fabric of reality. The ancient artifact had become a crucible of fate, its power a seductive promise and a terrible curse. Those who dared grasp it risked their very essence, their humanity slipping away into the void. Zorath's voice, calm and grave, echoed through the war-torn halls, a final warning and a lament. The resurrection protocols had bound countless souls to eternal servitude, a fate worse than death, a cycle of torment that neither time nor hope could break. The empire they fought for teetered on the edge of oblivion, sustained only by the fragile flame of sacrifice. Cailan faced the culmination of his journey, a choice that would define not only his fate but the legacy of Kasr Veyra. To wield the Catan's power was to risk becoming a prisoner of time itself, a guardian of endless sorrow. To reject it was to accept the Empire's fall, the extinguishing of a light that had burned through millennia. In that crucible of despair and resolve, Cailan's voice rose above the din, a vow to bear the burden, to stand against the encroaching darkness even as the world crumbled around him. The final battle was not merely a clash of armies, but a struggle for the soul of all that remained. Kasr Veyra's dying suns flickered as the fortress's fate sealed, a testament to the cost of ambition and the price of immortality. In the shadows of ruin, the Forgotten Watch stood resolute, heroes forged in sacrifice, their legacy etched in the stars. The skies above Kasr Veyra wept a final torrent of ash and fire, the dying suns casting long, flickering shadows over the crumbling fortress. Sergeant Cailan Varn stood alone amidst the ruins, his armor battered, his spirit heavy with the weight of countless lifetimes and lost dreams. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and sorrow, a silent dirge for an empire fading into the twilight of oblivion. Around him, the echoes of battle had faded, leaving only the hollow silence of a world undone. The Catan, once a beacon of power and hope, lay dormant, a relic of ambition's cruel price. Its eldritch energies had torn at the fabric of reality, and now, bound in chains of sacrifice and regret, it was a monument to what had been lost. Cailan's thoughts drifted through the ages, the faces of comrades and enemies blending into a tapestry of memory. Immortality had been his curse as much as his burden, an endless vigil watching empires rise and fall, hopes flicker and fade. The resurrection protocols had promised salvation but delivered only endless torment, binding souls in a cycle without end. He felt the weight of betrayal still fresh upon his heart, the fractures that had shattered trust, the silent wounds inflicted by those once sworn to stand beside him. Yet in the depths of despair, a fragile ember of hope remained, flickering against the encroaching darkness. Kasr Veyra was no more than a dying star, its light waning yet refusing to vanish entirely. The Forgotten Watch, though broken and scattered, had carved their legacy into the endless night, a testament to sacrifice, honor, and the indomitable will to endure. As the final ashes drifted into the void, Cailan raised his gaze to the cold stars above, whispering a vow to those lost in the endless march of time. The Empire may have fallen, but the spirit of the Watch would endure, an eternal flame in the shadow of eternity.